Selma Abeck.
Hello, I'm Norm. I'm with Nature. I'm the guy who they let stamp all the rejection letters, and I hate all of you, and you're all wrong about anything you've ever said. I am the only correct person.
What an interesting introduction, am I right? I recently wrote an article entitled Fractal Temporal Organization of Motoricity is Altered in Major Depression. And Norm, I'm here today because I'd like to know what you think about that article.
Well, it's actually one of the better articles that I've read recently in that it's only a flaming dumpster and not a flaming pile of garbage.
Okay, not at all what I was expecting. Kind of mean, actually. Care to tell me what you thought was wrong with it, Norm?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I always
Okay.
love correcting people.
Here we go.
First off, the ages and your participants. So, well, you took the mean age of your between the two groups, but really what you should have done is split them into age categories and then compare the difference in movements between age categories, such that an older person might not necessarily be, or an slightly older group might not be compared to a slightly younger group.
Oh, that's an interesting point you bring up, for sure. And while I may not have done that, I did control for most demographic information like gender, and you gotta admit that my range of ages was pretty good, right?
I mean, I guess. But you also didn't control for the length at which your patients had depression.
Okay.
Because you see, somebody who has developed depression more recently has a slightly different neural circuitry than somebody who has been diagnosed with depression earlier.
That's a pretty, solid critique, but where there's an issue that arises when you think, how many people have long-term depression that you know that haven't been treated at least one point for it? Not too often, right? Yeah, there you go. So it was much easier and more convenient for us to get patients that suffer from depression in the short term.
Haha, but
What else?
you also didn't control for your depression scores. You see, what you did was take people who are on the middle upper range of depression scores based on the scales you used, when really you should have gotten a broader range of scores and seen whether there was a correlation between those depression scores and movement chaos.
I mean, another solid point, I gotta admit. But Norm, tell me, how many helpers do you have in your lab, and how much money do you guys have?
I have approximately 500 helpers and $100 bazillion.
Okay, much more than I have. And do you have any idea how much it would take for us to gather enough people that have varying scores to provide this wide range of depression scores that you suggest?
I have no idea because I haven't done any actual lab work in the past 10 years.
Well, guess what? It's too much. It's too damn much. Next point.
Okay, well, you also didn't control for depression medications, for other medications, in that you controlled for depression medications, antipsychotics, and sedatives, which I'll grant you can affect movement, but you didn't control for other medications like beta blockers, because medications like beta blockers can cause tremors and affect movement.
Okay. That also makes sense. But I mean, you're gonna have to admit, we did cover the depression medication, the sedatives, and the antipsychotic medication. That's a pretty wide range of the medications that people with psychotic disorders take, right? Pretty wide. And you also have to take into account that maybe the medical officials in our area didn't prescribe these people beta blockers. Ever thought about that, Norm? Didn't think so.
I did.
So what do you have to say about that? Huh, Norm?
Well, I have to say that this is the end. This is my one-armed man. This is the end-all, be-all.
Uh-oh. I don't think so, but what is it?
What you did was you measured movements for 6 hours, and you let these people go into the wild, and they could have listened to their rock and roll music, done drugs, and had sex.
Actually, Norm, we encourage that.
Well, what you should have done is put them in a room and do a controlled task for 10 minutes while you measured their movements. You could have done something like, I don't know, off the top of my head, you could have had them mark reviews with an unnecessary amount of red ink and anger.
I get it. You know what? Norm, I think you're right on that one. Best point you brought up today. I'm gonna be 100. I didn't think you'd get me, but you did. You got me. Congratulations. But I feel like the big takeaway that we can have from this conversation that we just had was, yes, we were very excited. There's no like commonly used biomarker for the treatment effects of depression, and yes, we were very, very overzealous in the in the claims that we made regarding the results of our inquiry, but don't all papers have just a few issues? At least some?
Mine are perfect.
Nothing's perfect, Norm. But I feel like if we, move forward, we fill in the gaps that we discovered here today, I feel like somewhere along the line, people are going to use this paper as a reference point for a lot of big discoveries.
Well,
You gotta admit.
I guess I was a little harsh when I called it a flaming dumpster. I guess it was okay.
And Norm, I know how hard it was for you to say that was okay. And I appreciate that.
It is physiologically impossible for me to say anything higher.
Yep, absolutely. And we want to thank you guys for your time. This has been Norm Show with Norm.